Bonjour tout le monde. Week 3, Marc-André back from Highlands Golf Club. Week 3 for our golf and fitness program. So we really understood in the first 2 weeks what it is important to do with our spine. So again, we talked about the C posture, the S posture, but really again, what's important is to keep our spine neutral. Now, once we understand like what's the neutral state of our spine, and if we can improve it a little bit better by having done the exercises that we suggested, what we need to focus on now is really how we're going to bend over the golf ball, and then where is that flex point that's going to happen. So really what's going to happen is that we got to make sure that we're going to bend over from the hips, not from the top of the back. So again, we're referring to the first 2 weeks of exercise. I want to keep my spine in a neutral state, and then from here I'm going to bend over from the hips until I feel like my weight is traveling more towards my toes, and then I'm going to flex my knees. Again, this a very good word that you can remind yourself when you're on the driving range or when you're on the golf course is to have a posture that's active. So active versus passive. So you watch any sport on TV, you'll never see any athlete like a tennis player waiting for action. That's going to happen here. He's going to be over the ball, the weight's going to be more towards the toes, and he's going to be ready for action. So kind of the same thing into the golf swing. I don't want to be into a passive position where I'm waiting for something to happen. I really want to make sure that I have enough upper body bend over the ball from the hips, and then from here I can rotate, I can swing because I activated my torso properly, because I kept my spine neutral and bend over from the hips. So making sure that we keep that upper or that spine again neutral. From here we're going to bend over from the hips until the weight wants to travel more towards the toes, and then we're going to flex the knees. So Derek has a great set of exercises for you, both for mobility, for flexibility and strength, so you can have a great setup at the golf course next year.
Welcome back, CAF members. Derek here, FSI, TPI certified fitness professional with Carling, the Carling crew. So we're back here, week 3, day 2. We're working on corrective exercises. We talked about the hip hinge on the first day with the mobility, and Mark has mentioned the importance of that hip hinge and the importance of the active versus passive posture. So what we're going to do today for you is we're going to go over exercises that will help strengthen the areas that are needed for hip hinge. And those areas are going to be the glutes, and they're also going to be what we call ground force reaction. So in that active position, being able to push off the ground and rotate through the swing. Okay, so first exercise we're going to cover can be a challenging exercise, so I'm going to give you a progression that you can go through to make it easier into ways that you can make it a little bit harder. So exercise number 1 is called the back foot elevated split squat. Okay, so it's sort of like a lunge where your rear foot is actually elevated on something. If your balance is somewhat a weak point for you, then you can go ahead and grab any object and use it as a point of stability. So for the elevated back foot lunge, I'm going to start my progression with a foam roller assisting me with my balance. I'm going to put my foot on, right here I have low plates. You can use just a step at the house, something low to start to make it a little bit easier. And what I want is a nice distance between my back foot and my front leg. Okay, so the key here in your elevated back foot split squat is that as I go down into a lunging position, my torso stays upright and my weight drives through the front heel. Okay, so I don't want the weight in the toes with the knees shifting forward. I want you to think about coming straight down with the hips back. Torso stays upright. If you're looking at my shin should be almost vertical, and then I'm pressing back up from that position. If you want to make it a little bit harder, you can either do one of two things. Number 1 is stay at the low height, and you can lose your object for your balance. So I can just go for split squats with unassisted, or we can go a little bit higher. Put the foot on a bench or a couch or a chair at home, and we can do the same thing. We're sitting back, chest nice and tall, pushing through the front heel. I'm extending the hips. That's very key, extending the hips all the way. If I want to make it a little bit more challenging, last piece of the progression, no assistance, higher setting, down, chest nice and tall, push up from there. If you're still good with that, you can add weights to the movement itself. All right. Exercise number 2. Oh, I forgot to mention, obviously you're doing it on one side, so do it on the opposite side as well. Exercise number 2 is going to be a single leg Romanian deadlift. So a single leg Romanian deadlift, very similar to that airplane pose that we did in the mobility day, but now we're going to add a little bit of weight to it to make it somewhat challenging. So you can grab some dumbbells, you can grab a can of soup, you can grab water bottles, you can grab a backpack at home and load it with some books. Whatever you're holding is going to be in front of you, close to your thighs, shoulders back. We're going to focus on hinging from the hips, keeping the hips square to the ground, squeezing the butt and standing tall. What you want to avoid is the dumbbells coming too far away from the body. You want to keep them sliding down the thighs, reaching back with the hips, and very important to keep the spine neutral. So avoid reaching with just the upper body. Let that back leg lead the way. As you send the hips back, feel a stretch in the hamstring, then squeeze your glutes to push your hips forward towards your dumbbells. Again, unilateral movement, so do both left and right side. Single leg step downs, number 3. So a single leg step down is going to be, it's a small range of motion in terms of what we're doing. You're going to start standing on a step or a book, or in my case I have a couple of plates here. The key to this movement is going to be to send the hips back and push the knee laterally, tap the heel to the ground and extend. Okay, what I don't want you to do is shoot the knee forward, have the weight come all in the toes, and then drive from the quad. I want you to use the hips, engage the hips. So hips go back towards the wall, chest stays tall. I go down until my heel taps the ground, and then I push up and through, working on balance, working on stability, and working on strength through the hip joint, okay? So one more time, hips back, knee pushes laterally, so make sure the knee doesn't drop in. And then from there, extend. Again, one side, other side, do both. Number 4, we have the full deadlift now. So full deadlift at home, you might not have options to do it with weight or a barbell or even dumbbells. So you can practice the movement with just a simple broomstick, a dowel, a hockey stick, your golf club, okay? And what you're looking to work on is just the movement mechanics. So feet are going to be underneath the hips, hands a little bit wider than hip width. You should be able to sort of scrub your hips with your thumbs. You're going to hold it in a double overhand position, and your starting position is going to be down at the mid shin. So from this point here, the hips should be slightly lower than the shoulders. Your back is nice and flat, so a neutral spine. So if I turn to the side here, you'll see that I'm avoiding the round back. I'm keeping my chest up. My gaze is about 10 to 15 feet ahead of me. And then from here, I'm gonna extend. I'm driving my heels through the ground, keeping the bar close, pulling the knees back. Once I pass my knees, my hips come forward towards the bar. On the way back down, hips go back first so that my chest comes forward. Once I get past the knees, then I can think about bending my knees again, dropping my hips closer to the ground and getting back to the mid-shin position. Most of my weight here is through the midfoot and the heel. So I'm driving up. Again, I'm not lifting my chest too quickly. Hips come back. Chest comes over top of your bar or your dowel. And then once you pass the knees, you're going to sit back into that position. which we call the setup. You should feel the hamstrings engage as you push the hips forward. You should feel the glutes engage. A great exercise for ground force reaction too, so pushing into the ground to lift yourself up. Number 5, you can do this with or without an elastic band. So this one's called a hip hinge with a skater lunge. So you're gonna go into a hinge position where I send my hips back, and then from here, I'm gonna think about stabilizing on one foot and just pushing with the glute towards the side. I'm going back at a 45-degree angle here, and I'm keeping most of my weight in my supporting leg in the front, okay? I'm gonna do it on one side, and I will also do it on the other side in that hinge position, keeping the chest tall, working on extending through the opposite glute. If you do have any kind of therapy bands, you've been to physio before, or if you have these, what we call hip circles, you can go ahead, put these on your mid shin to just below the knee, and you can do the same thing with a little bit of resistance. So now, hinge position, knees bent slightly, push out, back, back, out, back. I usually tend to like to take it down a little bit so that I have a little more resistance. Just tapping that big toe on the ground away from me, tapping the big toe on the ground near my supporting leg. And our last exercise, very golf specific, really all about the ground force reaction. It's called a pivot and post up. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start in our setup position. We can go hands across the chest. We're gonna load. So what I don't want you to do is move your body laterally side to side. I want you to load the one hip, and then you're gonna turn and extend, thinking about getting your hips to point towards your target and squeezing your glutes at the top. Then you come back down, load, so it's gonna be down, chest stays up, explode, rotate through, keeping the belly tight, trying to get rotation in the hips using the glutes, down, rotate down, extend, and push through. Even if you're a right-handed golfer, I do want you doing this both sides. So I will have you rotate down on that left side, boom, push through, and use the right glute, okay? So it's very important to do what you do on the right side, left side, balance it out and make sure that both sides of the body are engaged so that you can accelerate and decelerate in your swing properly. Those are 6 exercises that you can do for improving your glute strength and your ground force reaction to help with the hip hinge in your golf swing. We'll see you next week.